What's up, chat? How's it going, everybody? Hope everyone's having a very good nerf day. A nerfy day. Last Dakka is the name of the new detachment, yeah, for sure. It's time to talk orcs. It's Wednesday. We're getting wactical. 2 orc discussions, indeed. Orcs have been on the minds of everyone in the metagame so far because of this detachment. And I guess they were right front and center in Games Workshop's minds in the consideration of the balance team, which is not usually where you want to be, because that usually means you're going to get nerfed. And they did get nerfed, and that's what we're going to talk about briefly. I don't think this is going to be a long stream, but I do think, especially based on the fact that we just talked about it for 2 hours yesterday, I think it's definitely worth talking about how this detachment got nerfed, obviously why it got nerfed, but also where orcs are going to go after this, because I think it's a big open question. Within the community, I've read a lot of interesting discussions about it among orc players. I am not, despite the fact that I have played more Dakka on the behest of the chat room, I am not myself an orc player very often, so I'm definitely not the most qualified person to talk about the best stuff in orcs coming from this, but I have looked at a lot of the discourse around it, and a lot of people are, there are definitely some people who are malding over it. I think that's certainly fair. And there's a lot of people who are very optimistic about the placement of the orc faction, which is interesting. Yeah, no Dakka, I heard too. That one's we had Mo Dakka, but we got no Dakka now. Sad. So let's talk about it real quick. I actually just found the Warhammer community patch notes article about it. Seems to be that there is such a thing as too much Dakka after all. Recently released more Dakka detachment proving themselves to be too shooty on the tabletop. They've assessed the orcs' recent performance at all levels of match play, have decided to make a few slight changes that should make more Dakka more fun to play with and against for everyone. Detachment rule now passively gains assaults. It's not tied to the WOG. However, orc units now gain sustained hits 1 during the WOG instead of sustained hits 2 all the time. Get stuck in, lads. Now excludes direct aggression units, and long uncontrolled bursts now only works for a single unit. That won't lay off the trigger instead of everything in your entire fucking army. Not that that was a huge deal, right? Most of the time you're spending all your CP on get stuck in. But obviously that's a good stratagem, right? And so it makes sense. So yeah, let's talk about it. Let's take a peek over at the detachment. I know I saw a couple people complaining that this does feel like a double nerf, and I do understand that, and I feel like it feels maybe a little heavy-handed here, like changing. It felt like a detachment where you could probably swap the detachment rule abilities and maybe change the stratagem. I think they're okay, but they received the swap on the detachment rules, the nerf. Change to one of its more powerful offensive stratagems, as well as change the WOG stratagem. That's a lot. So we'll see how they end up faring. Obviously, importantly, your sustained hits 1. I don't know why my Chrome is going so fucking slow. Jesus, how big is this PDF? Is it the size of the Jupiter? Oh my god. A few slight changes. Just a little bit. Just a little bitty boy. Obviously, you will still get sustained hits 1 when you are, when you pay CP to be in the WOG. However, what they didn't note this in the article, but they have increased get stuck in lads from 1 CP to 2 CP. I think that's probably fair, and that was certainly the change that everyone was expecting, alongside a change to the detachment ability. So you still have that access to that if you pay 2 CP, but it makes it much more difficult to unlock, and honestly, not really that much worth it. 2 CP for sustained 1 on units like Ludas or like bigger stuff like Stompas or Killicans and all that trash you can use it on. I guess I think the Killicans can still use it. They're not Gretchen, but they're Grots, I think, or something. I don't know, something like that. It doesn't matter. You're not gonna pay 2 CP for that for sustained 1 and a 5+ invuln. It's like, it's okay, I guess. Giving yourself advance and charge for 2 CP plus all the offensive bonuses is good in melee. I saw some people talking about how this might kind of reorient this as a primarily melee detachment that also shoots kind of on the back end, right? Like you have this access to the situational shooting buffs, and you also have this once per game kind of burst of shooting damage that you can maybe make use of with Ludas and with Tank Bustas. But otherwise, it kind of looks like every other orc list. Which I think is probably fair. Orcs is still orcs is a really good stratagem. Just giving anyone you want the Legionnaire ability is kind of nuts for a command point. The other change that happened is that long uncontrolled bursts, it no longer targets a character that selects a unit. It now targets a single unit, and that unit gains ignore cover. So this is actually, I think my face might be in the way here. Let's see if I can move it. This is actually a bit more of a side grade than I guess I gave it credit for, because previously you had to set up this stratagem before you used it. By getting a character in range, using the stratagem on the character, targeting the unit, stripping cover from that unit, and then all your other units could shoot it and they would get the benefit. It was a lot of it required you to get a character up in line of sight and potentially give up a character. It didn't really work on your like longer range guns. You couldn't just be like, oh hey, I'm gonna take my Big Mac from the back, use long uncontrolled bursts and target a unit to strip cover, because you had to be within 18 inches. So you had to have like it only was super useful on a turn where your like beast boss would break cover to like go advance and charge, and then he could strip cover from something that you would then shoot at adjacent like to him. Or if you had like random mechs and stuff running around, or if you were like up in the fight with some of your Luda units, but that was a little bit less common. So this is actually, I think, probably actually stronger than the previous version. It doesn't have the same raw power because you can't like target a knight with it and then actually vaporize it. But it does. It is much easier to use. It's much simpler. So that's probably fine. It's now a generalist detachment and a mech detachment. Still decent, less powerful than a detachment focused on making melee better. Yeah, I think that's probably the right call. But it's strange to introduce that in the same breath that we are talking about Tactical Brigade, right? So like Tactical Brigade saw all these nerfs. I guess are the Tactical Brigade changes represented in the documents? It's that you can issue one order at a time, and you have to take a leadership test to issue orders, otherwise they deal mortal wounds. Did anything else get changed in Tactical? I guess not. So I guess people could go back to Tactical Brigade. I guess it was just nerfs to units, right? Like we saw nerfs to tank busters and the stuff that you would typically take in multiples. But it feels like to me, the more Dakka detachment is likely to turn into what looks a lot like a Tactical Brigade, right? It's like, I think you still play like the Beast Boss units. I think those are great. You take a couple of those. You take a couple more melee-oriented guys, and then like one Luda unit and a couple tank bustas, but you're not all in on the Ludas and the tank bustas. That feels like what it's the platonic ideal of this detachment. Which is interesting. So like in comparison to Tactical Brigade, it feels like really like you're switching like the Luda units maybe, or the woody Luda unit that you might take for like to like strategic reserve in and commit on the WOG turn. You're switching that guy for the mech captain flashgate unit, which in my opinion is more tactically interesting. I think that unit has like more interesting play with it. I saw a lot of interesting like plays using it to like threaten like rapid ingress overwatches, which is like really like a weird use case for a unit. You very rarely see that. But that's one of the units that's very good at it. It just comes off the table edge and then shoots you with full rerolls, sustain lethal, like off the board edge, and like blows up a pretty relevant melee unit. Which I think was cool. I think that's neat. I think the other thing that I saw people talking about is moving back to War Horde We've already been seeing that Warhorde is getting my notifications are going off. I apologize for that, folks. I didn't remember I had them on. Was really interesting. Warhorder's already seeing some success. Like we talked about them even last week. If I can pull up the Warhorde list that we talked about yesterday, which I still have in my notes because I thought it was a more Dakka list and it wasn't because I'm a goober, I guess. So stuff like that is still certainly seeing play. It's very X1 kind of coded right now. And actually, Sheffield Super Major, had I think an X1 Warhorde list as well. Let's take a peek of where those were coming from. It was. Oh, maybe I'm stupid. Am I stupid? Orcs had like 4. Yeah, it was. I think it was the top placing orc player. It was. Top placing orcs. Vincent Stein. Vincent Stein. I'm going with Stein. Was playing just a bunch of big boys. Double Beast Boss, Double War Boss, Gaskell Thraka, Double Beast Snagga Boys. A bunch of trucks to carry them around. Breaka Boys. Triple Breaka Boys. We just talked about them, actually, because people were saying, and a great point out, is that they don't have any nerfs on their bomb squigs. Only tank busted bomb squigs are the bad ones. So Breaka Boys can just do unnerfed bomb squigs, which is sick. Plus, when they are Wog turn in Warhorde, they go insane, right? Sustained hits 1 on these guys. In addition, if you can get a leadership bonus on them, which I guess we are probably doing. If a Mega Nob squad for Gaskell Thraka, 1 Knobs unit, which might be a War Boss unit, and then I guess a Breaka Boys unit gets the other War Boss. But once they get that +1 to hit and then sustained hits 1, their attacks are so individually powerful that they go kind of insane. So that's neat. I think that direction is a pretty interesting way we'll see the faction go. I saw a couple people who were talking very vehemently about Green Tide being the future of the faction. I'm less convinced. I guess it's very good in the Ynnari matchup. That's a list that really doesn't care about lethal intent. And it's not going to do any damage to you before it hits you. And 20 Orc Boys, we talked about how awkwardly underwhelming they are when they're not on their Wog turn, but that's not the case for Eldar Aspect Warriors. They'll just fucking die to a bunch of a million Strength 4, Strength 5, AP 1. That's just perfect to knock them down. So that feels very good, maybe in a metagame standpoint. The Warlord list feel a little bit more well-rounded, I guess. But that's interesting too. So I think we might be back to a phase where orcs are back to their melee roots potentially. We got the shortest runtime of orc gunline, in living memory. It lasted 3 weeks. There are no orc units that care about assault when you hit on 5s and 6s, which is orcs going to melee for that Warhorde is better. Yeah, I mean, there's a couple stuff, right? I think it's actually interesting on Scorchas. I think you make Burna Boys kind of good because those guys are really good at just infantry sweeping and killing utility units, but the downside is that they're just medium speed. And they're good firing out of trucks, obviously, but being able to just disembark a truck and run 5 Burna Boys at you and contest an objective and kill half your unit or kill 5 toughness 3 guys or something is actually kind of sick. That might be an interesting use case for them. I do agree though that for the most part, the shooting is definitely not why you're taking orcs if you don't have those baked in abilities. Issue is that the change to more Dakka is that the nerf really killed the flavor. Flavor's heavy shooting and now it feels like a generic orcs. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. What we were just talking about, the Tactical Brigade. This feels like Tactical Brigade of a different variety, right? So you're hey, I'm pretty good at both shooting and I'm pretty good at melee and I have some tricks You're like, oh, okay. It's like, just, I guess, which version of tricks do you want? Do you want the advance and charge, or do you want the fallback and shoots? Or the advance and shoot, or the fallback and charge? Like, you get to pick, I guess. Cool. Thank you. Do I want to get reroll wounds on objectives, or do I want to impact attack with my storm boys? Like, it feels like kind of, I don't know. It's like a wash, I guess, between the two of them. I'm pretty okay at most things, which maybe is like where orcs are supposed to be, right? But it does feel like maybe their baseline shooting profiles should maybe be slightly better if they don't want to buff them quite as hard. Hoping they would make this Dakka sustain 1 too if you're in WoG. And that would probably tone it down enough. They nuked it, yeah. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't. If they were changing the sustain to only be effective while you're WoGing, I'm surprised that they also nerfed the effect, because sustained hits 1 is good, but it doesn't feel like sort of transcendentally effective. It's just good, I think. It's just all right. And capping that on either a 2 CP stratagem or your one turn, like your one go turn per game, feels a little awkward, especially because unlike Dread Mob, there's a really interesting thing in Dread Mob where that detachment particularly doesn't care about the WoG. Like, the WoG effect is not relevant for it whatsoever, and so you use it kind of like frivolously, and that to some extent felt like that was the case in Dakka, because if you had access to a WoG in return, you wanted it. If you needed to WoG to give yourself this huge shooting buff, then that would make sense. But the weird part is that, like, if you're forced into playing this combined arms role, but half of the once per game effect is buffing only one half of your attacks, then you have to try to get a turn where you can both utilize all your guns and all your melee at the same time, which is just never going to happen, right? That's just like a pie in the sky, like magical Christmas land kind of consideration. Like, am I going to get like 2 like solid advance and charges off at the same time that I'm shooting with all my Ludas? No, I'm not. Like, I'm going to shoot with one Luda unit at a time, maybe. And I'm going to maybe like get advance and charge with a couple things. And so I don't know, maybe I'm not really sure if you were trying to maximize the effect of the WoG, how you would really do that in this kind of list. So yeah, this feels like a quality of life ability almost. Like, sustained hits 1 during my WoG turn, sick. That's nice to have, I suppose. But I'm certainly not worth building an army around it. Sustained hits 2 definitely feels like, oh, okay, I see. We're gonna play big guns, and we're gonna like try to finagle a big sort of beta strike or something. But sustained 1 is like whatever. I am surprised that they changed it. It's almost the entire game hits on 3s, or 3s re-rolling. Should orcs just go to hitting on 4s? I think so. I think orcs should go to hitting on 4s and have like limited access to rerolls, and then I think it's more interesting. Like, you consider like what are the 4+ ballistic skill factions in the game remaining, right? It's like Tau, Astra Militarum, and that's like basically it. And Astra Militarum will bake in orders. Tau will bake in guidance. Both of them have access to some manner of rerolls. So, or like heavy weapons or whatever. So, you're basically ballistic skill 3. It's like ballistic skill 3 with like an asterisk, right? And orcs are just sitting on 5, right? And they just like, I don't know. It feels like if you wanted orcs to be inconsistent, you put them to 4s and you reduce the number of like zany, huge critical effects that they have, and you just be like, here you have a big attack volume, but all your attacks are like unmodified 4s, and so like go for it, buddy. And I think that's interesting. Drukari are 4+ ballistic skill? That's not true. Five plus with more shots make a lot of sense. Yeah, but the problem is that they've never made the number of attacks like commensurate with the effectiveness of those attacks. Like you compare like a big shooter, like a big shooter to like a heavy stubber, right? Is like a perfect example. Like an Iron House heavy stubber is like, let's go find a repulsor, I guess. Or like a knight, Imperial Knight or something. Oops, that's not right. That's the back. An Iron House heavy stubber is almost exactly a big shooter. The big shooter is strength 5 base instead of strength 4. Oh, it got baked into its fucking defensive ring. God damn it. Let's go to Lehman Russ. I'm striking on the issues here. But to my point, right? Heavy stubbers are roughly equivalent. There's strength characteristic is a little bit different to a big shooter, but a big shooter shoots fewer times. Despite the fact that its ballistic skill is significantly lower. So like we look at our pintle mounted heavy stubber on a Lehman Russ battle tank, right? Lehman Russ battle tank, ignore the fact that it has a baked in hit reroll, right? It's like this thing's already probably rerolling its hit rolls. It's most likely getting +1 to hit just because of the army ability, right? So it's essentially ballistic skill 3. Again, Astral Arm ballistic skill 3 asterisk, right? Versus orks is your ballistic skill 5, no modifiers. This thing is rapid fire 3 versus rapid fire 2, and you lose 1 strength. So you get +1 ballistic or +2 ballistic skill and +1 shot for -1 strength. So like a very equivalent weapon is just significantly worse than orks because orks like aren't supposed to be the shooting faction. If they wanted those to be commensurate, a big shooter would be like 5 shots rapid fire, like 5 or something. It would just shoot like a ridiculous volume. This thing is going to average 3 hits, 4 hits if you have a +1 to hit effect on it, if it's in rapid fire range. A big shooter needs to go to like 10 total shots to match that level of effectiveness. Now we can talk about the difference in the pip of strength afterwards, but just to sort of bring the point home, right? Orks in the past have had a higher attack volume than more stuff to make up for the fact that their guns are really inconsistent. But in more recent editions, that's not the case. And that's I don't know. It's just a choice they made. Oh, Votan and ballistic skill 4. Yeah, that's fair. But they are like legit ballistic skill 4. Their ballistics like they're +1/2 hit on very select targets, which is not very consistent. But they are like 80% of the time rolling 4 ballistic skill shots until like round 3 or something when everything has judgment tokens on it. But he plays a lot of Scourges. Oh, yeah. So it's a pretty common trope. Like, if we look at it's just almost anything, like a Hearthkin Warrior unit, it's a pretty common trope that infantry-mounted heavy weapons, so like the Hylas Rotary Cannon here, on a Hearthkin Warrior is an infantry-mounted heavy weapon, so it has 1 lower ballistic skill, but it has the heavy keyword. That used to be because these weapons got -1 to hit if you moved, and they just transposed that to be like easier to read, where it's +1 to hit on the few situations in which you stand still. Standing still is really rare in 40k because it's a movement-based game, so the heavy keyword's like not very good typically. But that's why Scourges feel like they have a lower ballistic skill than everything else. It's because they're infantry-mounted heavy weapons, and that's the case for most units, like Space Marines even. If we go over to like a Devastator squad, right, they also have that, where all their heavy weapons are going to be worse. Now, typically you don't see these guys because, like, why even bother with a lower ballistic skill unit when you could just take a Primaris unit that doesn't have that, or Devastator Centurions or something, but that is the trope typically. Almost no honest. I just hit on force faction. Yeah, because it's not very good. It's not fun to play, and it's not interesting. And I think that Games Workshop has kind of like come around to that. Like hitting with your attacks is more fun than missing, right? So it's like people will enjoy the game more if they roll their attack dice and then they roll those dice to wound. If they just roll their attack dice and nothing happens, then they get upset. They stop playing 40k. Which is how it is. So yeah, chat. I'm interested to see the implications of this change. It does. I do feel the loss of like the orc shooting detachment. I think you can still play more Dread Mob and get a little bit of that. And you can probably still play like a modicum of. It's probably Tactical Brigade, right? That is like kind of the shooting detachment now, where you have the full reroll flash kits and you have the +1 to hit order and you have all these other bonuses for stuff. So it's definitely not like a pure gun line. You always build in other stuff with it, but that's also just how 40k works in general. So I don't know. Knights are in a good place. Yeah, I do think I think that this change is probably really good for Knights. If people play less, more Dakka, I think Knights are pretty solid. We'll see how they deal with any other archetypes that sort of crop up, but it does feel like not getting cracked by three shock attack guns from across the board with a bunch of rerolls and sustains and rolling a million dice on them is probably pretty good. They could have less sustain too for shooters and big shooters alongside assault. That would have been cool. Yeah, I agree with that. It's hard to quantify though. It's kind of a perennial issue with 40k. Because 99% of the game's abilities are attached to your army and rather than your unit, it's very difficult. And oftentimes the units that you have can have different guns. It's very difficult to like call that out. They would have to be like ranged weapons of strength characteristic 5 or lower or 6 or lower or something, get sustained hits 2, as long as its damage is only 1. Other ranged weapons get sustained hits 1, and it's like you have to go through like there's like a huge amount of additional mental load on that. It would be cool if they called out stuff like that, but I actually kind of prefer that they don't, just because it's like more difficult to keep in like in your brain while you're playing. My God, is this random pistol like I have strength 5 or strength 6, right? It doesn't matter for my profile here because I'm shooting a toughness 4 guy, but it might matter for my extra sustained hits that I might get from my detachment roll. Let me look it up, and you're like, okay. I think they could have let sustain hits too and key it to the WOG, especially since the WOG stratagem was going up in cost. But that's just my thoughts. How did AdMech get attention from GW with no real win percentage change? AdMech's nobody knows how AdMech does anything these days. Inky, what are your thoughts about the Adeptus Mechanicus metagame? Yeah, I don't understand. AdMech, I think Games Workshop doesn't know what to do with AdMech is what my opinion on it, I guess. They originally he set out to write like Imperial Guard 2.0 and essentially were like, wait, that's dumb. Why do we have 2 identical armies in our game? And then had to like redraw it, and now they're like a weird infiltrating army. Bizarre. Need detachments only affect certain units. Yeah, it's different when you just keyword the unit versus like affecting a particular weapon type that a unit may or may not have. You know what I mean? Like a Ravener is always affected by Vanguard invasion, regardless of whether or not it has the Carapace armor or the gun attached, right? But if it's like if you suddenly like lost your advance in charge because you took the gun and they had to call that out in the detachment roll, that would be very difficult to do. Anyway, chat. That was all I got to talk about here today. It's not a long stream, but I think it's definitely worth discussing. That was the only change that we had. This wasn't like a balance update or anything. It was just literally that was it. It was just one detachment nerf. So that's all we got going on. Tau disappeared. Yeah, it's they're struggling a little bit, I think, for sure. Which is surprising because their Grosspus detachment seemed really good. I think the top players maybe don't want to play auxiliaries that much, but I don't disagree. The Tau's weird. In my opinion, they're always kind of like this strange like weird little subfaction because they built an army with such a perfectly cohesive aesthetic. They're like, hey guys, we built an army where every single model looks like it belongs to the same range. Whereas you look at a lot of other armies in 40k, you look at even Space Marines, you look at like Adeptus Mechanicus is a great example. You look at like Imperial Guard, a lot of the other armies, and because of the breadth of the universe and the fact that these models have been around for fucking ages, they don't look particularly cohesive. But you look at a Tau army and you're like, those are all Tau, right? They all have the crisp lines and the smooth plates and the curved surfaces. And then they're like, and also, here's a Kroot. And you're like, that doesn't fit. That doesn't vibe. It would have been cooler if they gave them like Tau armor or something so that they fit in with the rest of the army. Like Tau could very well be like a coalition army where they're just all like outfitted by the same people, but they all are different species. That would have been way cooler than what they did. But like a Kroot just being like this random guy dressed in rags is like next to this battle suit. Like, I don't know. It's aesthetically not very good in my opinion. It's you, Matt. Thank you for the super chat, buddy. The videos are invaluable. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. I hoped to have talked about this earlier in the day because obviously this came out this morning, but I was in the middle of editing a video and I really wanted to finish it before I moved on. Lions of the Emperor feels good. I agree. Yeah, Lions of the Emperor is really cool. That was a windmill slam of a detachment, I think, for sure, out of the new update. Kroot Hunting Pack is one of the highest win rates. That's fair. Like, it just stat checks people because nobody is expecting fucking 200 Kroot to run at you. It's so funny. We did watch it lose, though. We actually got killed by Thousand Suns. They were just killing like 60 Kroot a turn. It was a slaughter at NEO finals. Just turns out if you bring like 40 flamers to the battle, then that's pretty good. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. I think, gonna go ahead and pop off here. I believe, give me 10 or 15 minutes here. Set myself, but I think I'm going to be live over on Twitch. We have an outstanding game we have to play for Mr. Hippie Hunter, who dropped 50 buckaroos to make me play a weird Lion's Blade Task Force. So we're going to try to grab a game with that today over on Twitch. So stay tuned for that. Please come hang out with me over there if you are around. Stay tuned. If you're a YouTube channel member or a patron, you'll be getting some video content shortly as well. I'm going to post that up to those spots, I think, right after this live stream because it's sitting on my computer right now and I'm ready to upload it. And otherwise, that'll be available for everyone else within 24 hours, I think. And also, you're going to get redirected to a live stream this weekend. I'm going to be at the Battle to End Alzheimer's doing live coverage over there alongside Wargames Live. So that'll be cool. We'll have all the top tables covered between his patron table, and myself. We're going to get a lot covered. So with that, folks, thanks everyone for hanging out. And I'll see you around. Cheers, everyone. You had 42 flamers? Yeah, exactly. That was there were a lot of flamers there. Inky, do you fucking mind? Yeah. Fair enough. All right. I'll see you on Twitch, everyone.